members of the committee. My parents hail from Kadama in the Bulsa district, but they've resided all their life in Boku, most of their life in Boku. I was born in Kadama in 1951, but my mother was pregnant with me in Hafasini. And a week after my birth, I was transported back to Hafasini. And I didn't recollect I came back from the north. So I grew up in Hafasini. All the areas around there, Amape, Yakasi, call it what. Then in 56, we were in Takrady. Then 59, Kwame Nkrumah decided to open the Preventive Custom Marine Police in the Northern Territories of the former Protectorate. And I found myself in Laura in 59. After 3 months, I found myself in Boku, and we made a permanent home in Boku from 59 up to date. I went to elementary school in Boku, and then entered the University of Ghana. Practiced law for some time, did national service, practiced law for some time, and between February 1982 and December 1982, the PNDC appointed me chairman of the Committee of Inquiry into the Cotton Development Board pertaining to allegations of corruption and maladministration. And I had the honor to serve with the present Lorana, Edward Cabo, and one Ajay, who is now a professor in the University of Cape Coast. After submitting our report, I was invited to an interview and appointed PNDC Deputy Secretary to the Upper East Region in February 1983. I served as PNDC Deputy Secretary until 2001, when there was a change in government. In between, I served in both sectors and regions. In 1988, it became necessary for the Social Security Bank to be investigated. And while I was at the Volta region as the PNDC Deputy Secretary, the PNDC thought that the only credible person to chair that investigation was myself. So I was given additional responsibility for that committee, which I dutifully completed, and there is a white paper on it that resulted in the reorganization of what is today SG Bank. After that, became Deputy Attorney General and served in that position from 1988 through to the constitutional regime. I served as Deputy Secretary for Ministry of Justice and Deputy Attorney General through the first 2 terms of the NDC government. And my exploits in the courts in defense of that regime before and after the Constitution came into force have been recited by His Excellency the President when he was introducing me. And I'm among the few who helped the development of the constitutional law of this country. Unfortunately, the Right Honorable Peter Lajete and Darocha, who were more senior to me, no more. But the President was a worthy opponent, and he knew my abilities and capabilities. After the coming into force, into power of the NDC in 2009, I served under that regime as presidential advisor, later as Minister of Interior, and then later still as Attorney General. In 1999, I had the honor of being nominated by Chief Justice Isaac Kobina Aban to come to the Supreme Court. I declined it. Alhaji Dramani Yakubu is no more, but Justice William Abagambiri Atuguba, who is currently serving on the Supreme Court and is supposed to be the oldest justice on that court in terms of years at the bar, and your former Right Reverend Speaker, Justice Bamford Addo, were people who spoke to me and tried to persuade me, but I will not change my mind. This is to demonstrate that my acceptance of the position of special prosecutor is not because of the status, but it is because of the high ideals which are attached to making sure that the ordinary people of this country can have the benefit of the resources of this country by stopping the leakages and seepages that has gone on since the coming into force of the 1992 Constitution. You will recall, Honorable Chairman and members, that the reasons and excuses given for coup d'etats in this country are the prime ones are bribery and corruption. And people, generals, have laid down their lives even for taking loans in the bank. It is important, as the chairman of the House Committee of the Consultative Assembly, who took a no mean part in the draft of the 1992 Constitution, to defend it and ensure that it is not abrogated by preventing anybody or group of persons pursuant to Article 3 thereof who seek to encourage the abrogation of the Constitution by perpetuating the rape of the national purse. So when I left office in 2012, I decided to dedicate myself to the defense of the Constitution. When you remember the role of Delphabo and Ponsam, Osajifo Kutum Kununku, Bobobi, Rula Tekesin, Binding, and others who have lost their life played in the Consultative Assembly for the defense of this country, and you were a member of that assembly, you will not allow anybody to do anything that is contrary to maintaining the ideals and values of the Constitution which we fought to bring in force. It's important that this country is stabilized. It's important that nobody makes excuses to make a coup. The only way we can do that is to protect the national purse and give people who want to use that as an excuse as not to have the grounds. So when the president invited me and I raised some issues about the law, he told me, Martin, you know, as a constitutional lawyer, that whatever Parliament decides, he said, no, unless it is declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So I said, well, let me read it, and we'll run. When I read it, I agreed with the president that whatever wrong there is with the law, the fight against corruption was more important to protect the Constitution. And you just don't throw the dirty water along with the baby. So I agreed, having read the law, that
thank you, Honorable Nominee. We have heard enough about you.
Chairman, let me thank you for the opportunity and to wish the nominee well, but to refer him to the President's letter of 11th January 2018. The President spells, and your name is Mr. Martin Alamisi Benz Kaiser Amidu. The President spells his Benz with an E. In your CV, the E is lost. Which one should this committee go with? And would you want to give us your name as it should be?
My name as it should be is the one on my CV. And you know, Honorable Member, that the name is a nonsense syllable. And when the syllables are misplaced, it has nothing to do with the real name. It is Benz without an E, and I believe it's typographical error.
In your introduction in the CV, you stated you were born in 1951. May you share with this committee the day and month together with the year of your birth?
Well, as I told you, my mother got pregnant in Hafasni and delivered me in Kadama. And then when later on we discovered the record on which my father had written my birthday, it's supposed to be a Thursday. That's why I'm called Alamisi. And that's the record which my father wrote in his illiterate handwriting. It was among his things when we saw it. I used to debate with Professor Amidu that he was not far older than me until we discovered the record, which shows that I was born on 6th September. And when we checked later, it's true that 6th September was a Thursday. You know that there was no births and deaths in Navrongo, let alone Kadama.
So the record is correct, 6 September
The record is
1951,
correct.
that's all.
Yeah, in fact, it is the Gold Coast. It was a protectorate, not part of the colony.
So you were born 6 September 1951, per the
51.
CV submitted to this committee.
Yes, in the Northern Territories of the protectorate.
Which part of the protectorate?
The protectorate, you know, the protectorate joined Ghana on 6th, 1956 during the plebiscite, if you look at the history of this country.
And then before I yield to the Honorable Ablakwa, page 2 of your CV, you have 1966-1971 school certificate GCE O level uncollected from the school. You have the same thing repeated for 1971-1973 uncollected from the school. What accounts for that, and what explanation do you have for the committee?
The explanation is simple. You will see in my CV that I wrote GCE A level in 1972 internally. It took more than 2 years for that certificate even to be posted to the Workers' College for me to collect it. So when we left, when I went to Navrongo School, I was the person with the highest grades entrance form in Navrongo School that year. But there were people who had done better, who had even 5-1s and 6-1s in Navasco, right? So I entered Navrongo School with that aggregate, which was the highest aggregate. Then I wrote the A-level, as you see, in 72. And then I got very credible grades, which had never been gotten in the North before, right? So I entered Legon, by which time the O-level from commercial school had not arrived from the exams council. And the Navasco records took a long time to arrive. But in those days, the universities worked with the authentic records from the West Africa Exams Council, upon which they admitted. So I never went back to commercial school to ask for it, because I really didn't think that I needed it. But I'm still there because it's my alma mater. And I was one of their best students, and I thought that they would need it for posterity. Navasco too is lying there. I'm told some VNI man was in my village on the 1st. And I thought he would go to Navasco. The headmaster would have taken my file and given it to him. There's no reason why I didn't go for it. It's just that I didn't think that I should go to Navasco asking for the certificate when I had gone to Legon, they had authenticated the results. I brought all the other certificates, but because they are still with Navasco and commercial school, if you ask the Minister for the Interior, he will tell you I was not just a passing by student. I was very good.
Thank you. We will not call evidence at this table.
No, I was their prefect.
Mr. Martin Amidu, yes. I have a few questions for you on your CV for clarity purposes. On page, under bullet 4, employment history, you've written Executive Director of the Not-for-Profit Citizens Vigilance for Justice.
Yes.
When did you establish this, and is it a non-profit organization?
In fact, it was registered on it was registered to commence business on the 27th of September 2017. It's registered at the Registrar General. I was using a non-registered organization as citizen vigilance, but then I decided that I will establish it as a non-for-profit. So I applied to the Registrar General's department, and then I was one of the directors. And I never knew at that time that I would succumb to accept to leave it so early. but it's registered at the Registrar General Department. If I had known, you would have asked it out. I've even brought the certificates and everything. By 17th September 2017.
Okay. Again, under conferences or conference and capacity building programs attended, A, you've written head of delegation. When you go to C, head of delegation as well for these international conferences. I want to clarify which delegation. Is it the Ghanaian delegation that you headed to these conferences, or in what capacity were you leading the delegation?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't write it well, and I accept that in communication theory, the one who communicates is responsible for the meaning. But I assume that being the Attorney General at the time, I will lead the Ghana delegation. That's why I just put head of delegation, because that was it's only the Ghana delegation I could have led. But I should have clarified it, admittedly. And all the head of delegation I have been is as either a minister of Ghana or a deputy minister of the Ghana delegation. But I assumed it. I just subsumed that because I held those positions, it will follow, but it appears it doesn't.
I will want to begin from the second page of the Honorable Nominee's CV. Under the item G, University of Ghana, 1973 to 1978, LLB Honors. The records we have here in the House, the last you appeared before this committee on the 18th of February 2010. The records show that Mr. Martin Amidu was born on 6 September 1951. He obtained his Bachelor of Laws, LLB, in 1976 from the University of Ghana, Legon. That's quoting from the Hansard of Thursday, 18 February 2010. But here on your CV, we have 1978. Just want to find out from the Honorable Nominee for clarification. What should be the proper record?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't go to a regular secondary school. I went to a commercial institute. And in the commercial institute, we have called what we call accidental slips and omissions. If you look at H, my entry into the Ghana School of Law is 76 to 78. So if you read the CV within context, it's easy to see the accidental slip in omission that are really, and the LLB is 3 years. So this is just an accidental slip of omission due to typographical slip, which in commercial practice is very normal. So if you, as I explained, it's an accidental slip and omission.
Accepted, Chairman. It's an error. The record should please proceed. Sorry, Honorable Nominee. Sorry.
And I will wish that you correct it to reflect.
Thank you. The correction will be carried
as
out.
the H shows.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman. We'll correct it accordingly. Under employment history, Mr. Chairman, I ask this question because we have two entries here. Executive Director of the Not-for-Profit Citizen Vigilance for Justice, Civic Justice, since 27 September 2017, and Public Service Pensioner Constitutional Defense Activism, February 2012 to date. But taking note of Section 13.7 of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, it states the Special Prosecutor shall not, while holding office, hold any other public office or engage in any commercial venture, unquote. Mr. Chairman, just finding out from the Honorable Nominee if he intends to keep these positions as he has entered under employment history, bearing in mind Section 13(7) of the Office of Special Prosecutor Act.
Mr. Chairman, my position is that, and I have made arrangements to relinquish my position as an executive director, not because I think it will conflict with Act 959, because Act 959 says I should engage in commercial ventures. So a not-for-profit wouldn't be a commercial venture. But I thought that for the avoidance of doubt, I should relinquish it and allow the legal entity to go on. You know, the entry about pensioner, the real situation is that because I joined the PNDC as a secretary in 82 and served for more than 20 years and paid the Social Security benefits, I was entitled to payments after that. That really didn't make me a public officer under Article 191. It's just part of the pension, as we says, if you contribute. I still remain a lawyer who decides that he would rather do activism than practice. So that is the position. I have made my contributions more than 20 years. I reached 60, and then I decided to take the claim. But then that doesn't really make me a public servant. I was a political office holder, and I'm now a private citizen. And indeed, they even say that market women can apply for Social Security as long as they pay the requisite money. When they reach 60, they can go. So that's the explanation for the public service thing. And so the impression that I was like a chief director should be disabused. I was a political office holder, not a public servant under 191.
Grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on page 3 of the CV, Amidu Consults, 2002 to June 2009. But after that, there is no other mention of Amidu Consults. Are you able to please tell this committee what the current status is of Amidu Consults?
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, I was vetted in 2010, and this very issue arose. I think the current Minister for Education raised it, and I said Amidu Consult was deregistered in 2006. It was deregistered in 2006, but I had done some consultancy work for ISODEC and others. So this Honorable House said that, okay, even though ISODEC had paid my tax, I had to pay some additional tax. So that was done, and that was the condition on which I was approved. And then I became a minister. Amidu Consult deregistered. I have left 2012. It's defunct. I don't practice law, which is a choice. I decided to be an activist, even though the knowledge of the law is still in my head.
Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee, under his biodata and personal profile, under the numbers of children, was very generous with this committee, provided us details of the ages of the children. But under marital status, we only have married. Are you able to share with this committee?
What more did you want to know? That is disallowed. No. If there's another question, receive please.
No, Chairman, there's a reason for the question.
No, Sammy, still on the children, Chairman, page 1, adults, 35, 41 and 43 years respectively. Who are those? And respectively qualifies for who? We need to know. 31 in respect of who? 43 in respect of who?
Mr. Chairman,
Just adults is not
names
sufficient.
are in respect of from senior, junior to senior. And the question was children. Honestly, I was going to say no child. And I use adult children because I have no responsibility for these people as children. So as far as I'm concerned, they are not my children. If you go to the UK and tamper with anybody of this age, you go to jail. So it's because of the ambiguity of the question that I put those names there. But my family,
An ambiguous question deserves ambiguous answer.
My family matters are private. You know,
Mr. Honorable Member, I think it's sufficient. I mean, what is interesting is the children and the elders. Now I get the import because you're asking whether if he has children, but he has adults. Yes, Honorable Obiamwa.
No, I'm not done, Mr. Chairman. The final one from me. The final.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The final one from me.
Obi, hold on. Yes, Sammy, your last one.
The final question on the CV from me, Honorable Chairman. It's on page 3. I noticed an overlap when the Honorable nominee was Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice. He has an entry here, MA Conflict Resolution, Antioch University, McGregor, Ohio, USA, 1999 to 2001. Just want to find out for clarity if this entry is accurate. Probably it was a sandwich program or a correspondence course, because at this time you were Deputy Attorney General. Just for clarity, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, it was a cohort course, which as Deputy Attorney General, I undertook. I went to the U.S. for 2 weeks at a time, 2 occasions. I was in cohort 12. The rest of the course was online. And because it was online, it took that period of time to complete. The certificate, I was asked to bring out certificates, is here.
Very well, Honorable Obiamwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Amidu, welcome. You have a very rich CV. Some parts are quite interesting. But the first one I want to ask is, you said you were Presidential Advisor on Legal Affairs, July 2009 and February 2010. In what respect were you a Presidential Advisor?
The then President, Professor John Evans Adam Mills, had nominated me as ambassador. And then, for personal reasons, I couldn't take that appointment. So he invited me and offered me Presidential Advisor on Legal Affairs. We had been friends for more than 30 years, and so I accepted it. And I gave him legal advice. My office was in the castle, and his secretaries knew how close we were and how frequently I was called upon to advise him. But it was for a short period, and then I think there was discomfort, so I was moved to Interior.
So, were you under the Presidential Office Act? Your appointment, did it come under the Presidential Office Act?
I think so.
You're not sure?
The letter is there, just that I didn't know that you would need it. But there was a letter signed by John Henry Newman, appointing me as a presidential advisor to the president. It didn't state the legal affairs. But when I came, that was the assignment I was given.
Okay. The leadership positions held. this is just an aside. I've seen vice presidential candidate, secretary, junior command room, the general secretary. But I thought after the elections, you also had a position, shadow vice president.
That is disallowed. On CV, yes. No, minority, majority.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. I want to take the honorable nominee back to an issue that has just been discussed. And I think it's important because this is a house of records so that we get it clear. Mr. Chairman, I don't think it will be fair to let it pass. If viewers are listening and the interpretation
Honorable member,
that,
kindly ask the question.
yes, that's what I'm getting to, Mr. Chairman. Please, if you'll be patient with me. Thank you. Okay. So I don't think it will be fair to let it stand, especially that some children may be watching. If it is interpreted to mean that when your children become adults, they cease being your children. Even if they are adults, I think they are still your children. And the nominee says that he doesn't think that they are his children. But I think that we have to set that record straight. Does the nominee agree with me, please?
Mr. Chairman, Shakespeare says there are as many opinions as there are men. In my learning and understanding, children are children. When they attain the age of majority, they legally are adults and no more children. So my understanding is that I have no control over these three adults. And if I attempt to control them, I could be in legal trouble. That's why I call them adults. But biologically and legally, when they were kids, they were my children. That's my opinion.
So do they cease being your offspring? Do they cease being your children? Because
they don't cease being my offsprings. They are my adult companions for whom I will do anything because of the blood connection between me and them. But they are not, strictly speaking, children.
Right, Mr.
And as I said, there are as many opinions as there are men.
Mr. Chairman, I'll proceed to another issue that has to do with his certificate. And I relate one provision from the Ohio, United States of America, 1999 to 2001. Mr. Chairman, at the same time, it seems to me that he was undertaking this program. He was also Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. That was between January 1997 to January 2001.
It has just been asked by...
Mr. Chairman, I know, I said so, but if you are patient with me, you'll see that I have a different question related to it. Thank you.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. So can the nominee confirm to this committee if indeed at the time that he was pursuing this cause, he was a minister of state, and that is to say he was a student minister. He was a minister and at the same time, a minister of the republic, paid by the taxpayers' money and still schooling at the same time.
I wasn't a student minister. I discharged my duties as Deputy Attorney General fully. If you go to the law reports, it will tell you that I distinguished myself for the NDC government creditably within that period. And at my spare time, I use the computer to enriching myself. I'm not those who go to Jimpa, the army, this thing, while the whole office. I didn't do that. I stayed in Ghana, used the distance learning at my spare time, and fulfilled my ministerial duties to the letter. That's what happened. I visited the school, but it was upon permission from the government. I didn't elope. I didn't go on a wall. Never. I was the approval for me to go for 2 weeks and come back. And indeed, the government was interested in my program. That is what you have the Alternative Dispute Act from. That is how the judiciary came to deal with conflict resolution, right? And to improve upon it. That is why I spearheaded the National Peace Council Act into Parliament. I enriched my knowledge to be able to fulfill my duties at my own private time. And what else will it demand from a patriotic minister who wants to help his nation?
So, Mr. Chairman, the point is that he was a minister and a student.
Honorable member, do you have another question?
I want his confirmation. Is that
Do you have another question?
Mr. Chairman, I just want his confirmation. So he was.
He has confirmed it. Yes, Honorable Atacha.
Yes. Leonard Senior, I am beside myself regarding this student minister thing you've introduced. But there is a fact of law that I want you to come to terms with. If you said that children, when they graduate into adulthood, cease to be children, then you are rewriting the whole of succession laws. And the whole of inheritance will be cancelled. And therefore, by operation of law, insofar as somebody comes out of your loins, even if it's 90 years, and you are 150 years, that person remains a child and can inherit you. So, Senior, I do not share your view at all, that by reason of an opinion.
Honorable Minister, are you asking a question or offering an alternative?
No, I'm stating that, I'm making a statement of law. There is no opinion concerning a child. Yes. As he claims there is an opinion. There's no opinion. It's an operation of law. Are you the biological, father of somebody? That ends it. The age factor is of no consequence. And we shouldn't sit here and rewrite the rules of succession to mean that when you were a child.
Honorable member, can you ask a question without due deference, or your opinion is stated?
I have grown up to know Mr. Martin Amidu as a citizen of Boku. And I have grown up as a close family member. Today, I have a CV before me that says that his hometown is Kadima. We, the people of Boku, want to know, is he with us as Boku, or he's with the Kandima people?
Mr. Chairman, the answer on my CV was dictated by the question. My parents come from Kadima, both mother and father. So, if you ask of hometown, I assume that that's the hometown. My permanent place of residence since 1959 has been Boku. You know, and this was a non-issue until I became running mate. And then people started pulling apart where he comes from. But it really didn't matter. I even thought I was an Nzima when I was growing up, until my father was sent to Boku. And then 1969, he sent us to his village. Then we realized that after all, we're not from South, we're from North. And as Ghanaians, for me, I think that I was answering the question based on the place of birth, as I said, Kadima. And why did they send me there to be born? Because my father and my mother come from there, right? So when you ask hometown, the question is, if I put Boku, my parents don't come from there, even though they lived and died there, each of them. So that's why the question dictated the answer.
Thank
but
you. Yes,
I'm closer to Boku Naba than any other chief.
Yes.
So I've lost the fight.
Mr. Chairman, I've just said I'm closer to Boku Naba than any other chief. And I've said that both my parents lived and died in Boku. Your father knows that.
Yes, we quite take that as global.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Martin Alamisi Benz Kaiser Amidu, congratulations. I want to take you through page 5 and 6 of your CV. One as head of delegation to Commonwealth Law of Ministers and senior officials to Sydney in Australia. Then head of delegation, Commonwealth Law Ministers Conference, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. Then in Kuala Lumpur. My question that I want to ask you respectfully, is the Commonwealth relevant today in terms of our contemporary
Honorable Deputy Minister, we want to finish with the CVs. We will come to substantive questions.
Why is CV now?
No, you're deliberately driving or circumventing the rule. If you have another question on CV, otherwise I'll go elsewhere and then come back to you.
Let me try and ask this one. The former president is one of your referees. His Excellency, Jerry John Rawlings. Any special interest?
Well, he was the one who brought me into politics by appointing me from 1982 as an investigator to 1983 as a PNDC secretary. I served under him until January 2001. If there is anybody who will know me better, it must be him. And whatever anybody says about him, he reduced corruption and graft to the barest minimum. He didn't abolish it. And if I am an anti-corruption crusader who is defending the Constitution, who better than him? And I was really humbled when hours after my nomination, he came out to make those commendable comments about me. I mean, he's the only one who can say it. And the next fellow I put was Amonomoni. He was DPP who worked with me and knows my impartiality, my transparency, and fairness to all manner of people.
Yes. No, I'll kneel and tell before you. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, my first has to do with the nominee's answer to a question that he was a presidential advisor on legal matters during the era of President Atta Mills. I want to ask, as a presidential advisor, did you draw any salary?
Presidential advisors are on salary. I'm amazed this question is asked.
And you said...
It's a government appointee on salary.
And you said you left because of discomfort. What sort of discomfort?
I said that I served for a brief while. Mr. Bakumen said the president's secretary will tell you that after not long, your friend is calling you. He says in the house, and each time I went there, decisions were torpedoed and changed. So my presence in the presidency there looked very uncomfortable. So I was sent to Interior. But even then, the secretary to the president will tell you, in a short while, your friend says you should come. So that was my rule. Indeed, until 13th of January 2012, when I had a problem with him, we never had a problem. He always sent for me. Yobaku Mensah is alive. He see me talking. If I'm lying, he was so close to him as secretary to the president. He should tell the whole public.
Chairman, before the Honorable Nilante continues, Honorable Martin Amidu, the Hausa you just spoke, Abochinkawe Kazo, is that Ghana Hausa per your CV or Kano Hausa? Which of the Hausas?
It's Ghana Hausa.
Honorable nominee, are there differences in the Hausa? I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, when you hear Honorable Ayaraga speaking Hausa, there's a little difference because when his father, my very good friend, went into exile with them, they learned the Hausa of that place. And then when he came and I got him a security pass to resettle, he brought them. So his Hausa is different from mine, which is a Boku one.
All right, Honorable Nilante, continue.
Mr. Chairman, I want the nominee. Mr. Chairman, I want the nominee to confirm at what age was he first appointed under the PNDC?
21st, I think, February 1983. So I should have been about 31 because I'm 1951. So by 81, 31st December, I would have been 30, I think. So it's just a matter of, I wasn't good at maths. I had to compensate for statistics in political science in Legon. So my calculations are very good.
Yes.
Yes, flowing from the answer the nominee gave, he said he assumed to be the leader of a delegation, a government delegation, and before you left, the structure did not tell you who the leader of the delegation was, so you assumed the position?
I was the leader of the delegation. What I've explained is that...
Honorable, please hold. He didn't say that. He said he was Attorney General. So naturally, he assumed that.
Mr. Chairman, normally the Attorney General leaves his office on delegation, and the letter which comes indicates that you are leading your delegation to the 10th anniversary of the International Criminal Court. So I went with the DPP and one principal state attorney. As Attorney General representing Ghana government to the United Nations, the ambassador received us and accompanied us to the meeting. And the only capacity in which I could have been leading that delegation was as Attorney General. Otherwise, I would have been functus officio.
Mr. Chairman, you see, the reason why I'm saying this is, for instance, something. The nominee has also assumed the position of a shadow vice president before. That's why I was flowing from that.
Honorable Eriko Boko, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my question is on the 35, 41, and 43 adults. I have with me here a write-up by the nominee under the title, Okujeto Abrakwa is uncouth and uncultured in insulting
Chairman, when we finish
it's
with the CV.
It's on the CV.
On CV that...
I'm relating it.
What is on the CV?
You let me land, you get
No. We have
Chairman,
agreed on rules.
Okay.
So if you have a question relating to what is stated on the CV,
Okay.
please, otherwise we'll come, you can ask
relate
any
it so that
question.
you get the input. No. I want to relate it to the issue here. It's very relevant. It's about, Mr. Chairman, it's about the issue of children. The nominee in this write-up has referred to his children, the last of the 3 children.
So refer to the children.
That's right. So let me read. The nominee wrote, the last of my 3 children, who was born on 31st December 1982, now has 2 children and is in Okujeto Abrakwa's peer group. And today he's here saying that the 3 are not children, they are adults. So how is he reconciling the 2 positions?
Mr. Chairman, this is simple. This child at that time was born on 31st December 1982. She was a child. And I said he's in his peer group. She's become an adult. I don't have any legal control over her. So that's the input. At the time she was born, she was my child. I looked after her to go to school. She's grown. She's a getting majority. She's married now with 2 children. There I go and say that I can do anything with her. That's the input.
Chairman, thank you. I go to item 9 on the CV, on the last page. The heading is Hobbies. There is listed some hobbies knowing the nominee and his public image, which I expect him to espouse. And one, cycling, walking, reading, which I really expect, and undertaking welfare activities. But the first one, listening to music, I would want to know the type of music the nominee listens to.
I like listening to local traditional music, either kusal or bully music. But I also enjoy any music which catches my fancy. When growing up, there are so many of them which I can't remember, but they are very fantastic.
I would want to ask, a young, talented music just passed on recently. A couple of
That is not on the CV, please.
No, he listens to music.
Yes, he has explained.
Does he listen to the music of the young, talented?
When we come to the substance, when we want to ask, yes, Honorable Hello.
Thank you, Chairman. Still on the hobbies, I'd like to know what particular welfare activities he has undertaken. Thank you.
Well, I mentor a lot of people and help them in their type of needs. If you come to Medina, they will tell you most of the people in my community, when they have problems, they come to me. And that's why I'm even called citizen vigilante, because people have even misinterpreted to mean that if you have anything that you need assistance, you should go to Mr. Martin Amidu. And they do it. And even when I was invited to this meeting, amazing how many illiterate people wanted to come. But you see, constraint of numbers. So within my community, I help, both socially, politically, culturally, and all that. And in Boku, when I get home, it's like a market.
Why, Neil, despite the so many things you have done, why don't you have any award?
Honorable Mr. Chairman, I thank the honorable member for his question. Honorable, you know that since March 1983, when you became my colleague, ours was to dedicate ourselves to the service of this nation without, making any effort for recognition, because we joined the system not for awards, but for what we can do for the people. And if I'm right, you and I have lived that life and continue to live that life. That's why there's no award. I never lobbied for it. And I was given, in fact, people called me after my case in the Supreme Court and offered me awards. They've written to me. And I've told them it's not about Martin Amidu. It is about Ghana. Do emulate what I'm doing. Don't give me an award. The last was the Emmy Award, which they were giving me an award for anti-corruption. I wrote them and told them it's not about Martin Amidu. It is about emulating what I am doing so that Ghana will be better. So I don't want it to be personalized to me. So I don't take awards. Generally, I refuse them because I want it to be centered on the national need, of developing this country. And that is why you and I joined the PNDC, even though our objective is still eluding us.
What you mean is that you have personally refused to receive the awards. That's what that means.
Those which were given to me by NGOs and all that. The government hasn't given me any award. I haven't tried to ask for one. I know people who took their law bar degrees from national awards. I am not one such person, you know. But since I did the case in the Supreme Court, so many NGOs have offered me, even radio stations, some of them are here, TV stations have offered me. And I have told them it is not about Martin Amidu. It is about the nation Ghana. You see, I'm a very shy person. I don't like the limelight. Even sitting here is a problem for me with all these cameras looking on me. That's why, as a Minister of Interior, as Attorney General, you scarcely saw me in TV unless I'm doing a press conference or something. So that is the reason.
No, not the name. I just want to, because I was at home at the bar conference when you were awarded, even though you did not come to receive the award, but it was also indicated that you had rejected it. So I want to understand that the optional means that even though you have been recognized, you have declined to receive them.
Mr. Chairman, in Ho, I was told that there were going to be awards. And I said I would be unable to attend. You see, it's like the Emmy one. I had written I would be unable to attend. And they said, send somebody to attend. So I had to write and say, I just don't need, I'm not going to accept it. So that's the same thing. And no award really came from the bar conference. No physical thing came. It was announced and died with the wind.
Yes, Honorable Yelich.
Mr. Chairman, the name of the nominee is a problem. Was he born with these names or he acquired them as he went along? Martin, Alamisi, Benz, Kaiser, Amidu. I mean, what is that?
Mr. Chairman, normally, when I was born, my birthday was used to call me. That's Alamisi. That's because in some customs, they don't immediately name. And that Alamisi followed me. When I was baptized, I chose the name Martin. Amidu is my father's name. When we were in Bokobiru boarding, there was the picture of Sir Alan Benz. And everybody called me Alan Benz. Even today, my classmates call me Alan Benz. So I decided to call myself Benz. Then when I did history in commercial school, we did the German Kaiser. And Adamu Seydou and Co. all, as Dano preferred, when I'm going to talk, they will say, silence, the Kaiser speaks. So I became Kaiser. And as I said, at one time in my life, I wanted to cancel all of them and be called Alamisi Amidu. Then when I got to law school, I read Gravin Williams. He says, what is there in a name? A name is a nonsense syllable. So if it's a nonsense syllable, why change it? So I left it.
Yes, Honorable Minority Whip.
Director of the not-for-profit Citizen Vigilance for Justice. He said he was one of the directors. Did I hear him right?
Yes.
Meaning there are other directors?
Surely. It's a registered company at the Registrar General. A search will disclose them.
So who are the other directors?
I'm saying a search will disclose them. Because I don't have their permission to name them.
Well, on page 3 of your CV, between 1993 to 2001, then again 2011 to 2012, you have served as a Minister of State. Did you declare your assets?
It would have been sacrilegious not to. It is a constitutional requirement. It's filed in the Auditor General's Department.
Between 1988 and January 1993, you served as chairman, Public Agreement Board. What was the function for this group?
Mr. Chairman, I think I have indicated that the Public Agreements Board was set up under Section 42 of the Provisional National Defense Council Proclamation, Subsequential Provisions and Consequential Law, 1983, PNDC Law 42. And my main job, in fact, the functions are clearly stipulated, the statutory. My main job was a gatekeeper against people, ministers, and others trying to push through contracts and agreements which were not in the national interest. And indeed, before I was appointed, the chairman lasted 6 months. But when I was appointed, I lasted until we came into the constitutional regime. And the Honorable Yelechire will tell you that I was so meticulous with my members that unless the contract is in the national interest, I rejected it. And I had a lot of problems with senior ministers, PNDC members, but the president, the chairman of the PNDC, solidly behind me, and I did my job, and nobody has been accused of entering into a contract which was not in the national interest. Because if anybody is to be prosecuted, it will be me who approved the agreement before the PNDC signed it. So that is, and also we were supposed to keep records of public agreements. I had a secretariat, and I suppose if the archives of the Attorney General's Department is working, all the minutes are there. And you find them there. I'll give you one example. SIC decided to enter into a contract with Elcom-SIC for building of accommodation in Accra. We disapproved it. I was in Kumasi coming from the north when I heard over the air that the Minister for Works and Housing and the Chairman Committee of Secretaries had, inaugurated the board. When I came, I wrote a letter to the Chairman of the PNDC and told him we hadn't approved it. A PNDC meeting was called, right? I was able to get the background of the companies from the UK. And it showed that the company which was coming to partner, the most viable financial institution in Ghana, had only £200 as stated capital. With all the PNDC secretaries and committee of chairman making the distance, PNDC refused it. That's the job I did. And that is why, if you want anybody who will be meticulous in investigation and prosecution, the president has made the best choice for you. But if you want somebody who will look the other way, just disapprove me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This chairmanship you serve at the time that you were also the Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. Is that right?
That is so.
Again, Mr. Chairman, the nominee became chairman, subcommittee of National Investigations Committee, appointed by the PNDC into financial irregularities and maladministration within the Social Security Bank Limited, July 1988 to September 1988. What was this about?
In fact, I was PNDC Deputy Secretary for Volta region. There had been a problem, so Kobna J came to take over from me in the Ministry of Industries, and I went there. Not long, there was a problem at SSB Bank, and the PNDC was looking for what Neo Kaja said, a hard-nosed fellow. And the chairman of the PNDC decided that his hard-nosed fellow to nose into this thing was me. So I was given additional responsibility for that investigation. But I will go to Ho, do my work, take a number of days, come and do the investigation. And that led to the reorganization of the Social Security Bank, which enabled us to divest it into SG, Society Generale today. At that time, it was a topical issue. The younger ones don't know how serious it was. But we did a good job. There's a white paper on it, and one just has to look at it and see how we did it without fear or favor, affection or ill will. Whether you were a friend or a foe, once you were liable, no, the gamble falls.
Honorable Martin Amidu, in your answer and in your narration of your discussion with the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa, you intimated to this committee that the values and ideals of accountability and transparency and wanting to fight graft and corruption inspires you to accept this nomination, but that there were certain wrongs with the law. I believe you are referring to the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959. What are the wrongs with the law that you see and as you wrote? Do you share them with us? And would you call for an immediate review and parliamentary amendment of those wrongs? Thank you.
In fact, as I said, it was a discussion between me and the President. And I called his attention to the fact that I had written a critique about the law. And I had made proposals that I didn't think that they must equate the position with that of the judiciary, which is in my critique. I made it abundantly clear. I didn't know whether that was in the law, right? But it turns out that it is in the law. So the question was, what do you do? So I said that, when he said that, look, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That meant that, in spite of what I said, once the Supreme Court hasn't made a ruling on it, and the law had been passed, and he wanted me to be his nominee, it meant I had to subject myself to approval of Parliament. And once I had nothing to hide, I said, no problem. My problem was a problem of constitutional principle. But if it has been passed, what's the problem? And you recognize that Trump, US President Trump, signed the Russian sanctions law with a memorandum saying that he believed it was unconstitutional. And yet it is the law. So that's one of the things I mentioned to the President about, but nonetheless thought that it is better to fight the canker ourselves in a democratic regime than to allow it to fester, and some opportunists will use it as an excuse, as has been used in the past. So that was the main issue which came up for discussion.
Chama, what I want to appreciate from the nominee, do you see anything wrong with the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, Act 959, as assented to by the President?
What I would want to say is that I have made critique about the bill, right? Most of it has been taken care of. Most of it. And I've given you an example of what wasn't taken care of. And I understand the pressures Parliament was from civil society, right? Who thought that a certain perception should be taken. As far as I'm concerned, the law is in its current form, is doable. And as I wrote in my critique, what the President was suggesting was doable. And as long as it's doable, I go with it. Because if you have fought corruption and its allied friends since your infancy, and this is the only opportunity to try to see whether you can excise the canker, don't throw away the water, the dirty water, with the baby.
Chairman, in the nominee introduction, I'm paraphrasing him again, you said there were slippages and leakages, and therefore your commitment to fight graft and corruption. However, you ended with a reference that since 1992, is that to suggest that from independence, we have not had those slippages and leakages?
Chairman, I have said that one of the reasons given for the various coup d'etats corruption. And these are slippages and leakages. When I went by 1993, it's the 4th Republican Constitution, which is supposed to be the last constitution for Ghana, right? So if in the past there were these slippages and leakages, which resulted in people being shot at the firing squad by no less a regime by the PNDC, the June 4th regime, which metamorphosed later into the PNDC under which I served, and whose ideals was to prevent it. I am committed to make sure that what I started as a young man and served until January 2003, 7 January 2003, that's when the constitutional rule came into force. And the Constitution says accountability, transparency, the rule of law will be respected. So that's what I mean by from 93, that is within the constitutional regime.
That's appreciated. May I take the nominee to Section 4 of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017, and with the chairman indulgence, I quote, except as otherwise provided in the Constitution, the office is not subject to the direction and control of a person or an authority in the performance of the functions of the office. However, 4.2, chairman, and that's where my emphasis is, and that's where I'll drive my question from. Subject to Clause 4 of Article 88 of the Constitution, the office shall, for the purpose of this Act, be authorized by the Attorney General to initiate and conduct the prosecution of corruption and corruption-related offenses. Walk this committee through how you intend to work with the Attorney General to realize the fundamental objectives of this Act.
Mr. Chairman, if you go back to my critique and look at page 8, I said that the Special Prosecutor Office Act will not be constitutional unless the Special Prosecutor works under the authority of the Attorney General. And in fact, there are legal decisions which interpret what working under the authority is. It doesn't mean that the Special Prosecutor loses its independence. So that's the way I see it. The Attorney General, by Article 88, has been given certain powers, right? Unless you change the Constitution, a Special Prosecutor can be made independent and work under her authority. It has a different meaning from the meaning many people ascribe to it. And if you read that, my critique, you will see that I've quoted Namibian and Trinidad and Tobago cases, which interpret what authority accounting are. So that's why I supported that as a basis for drafting the bill.
So how independent do you conceive you will be from the Attorney General established under Article 88 of the Constitution?
Mr. Chairman, I act from precedent, and I act also from persuasive precedents. When the Parliament was drafting this act, I emailed an article by Kevin Stark to the clerk to the committee so that the ranking member and the chairman of the committee will have an insight on the American position. And it is clear that even under the code of ethics of lawyers in Ghana, every lawyer is an independent contractor. If you sell your conscience to your colleague lawyer, you are subject to discipline by the disciplinary committee. So I get amazed when I'm told that lawyers have been directed by the Attorney General to do that, when I was Attorney General, I never directed anybody. I discussed with you. If you had a strong feeling that you couldn't do it for ethical reasons, I took the docket. I went to Supreme Court on a number of cases because my lawyers, some of them, had a strong feeling. So any lawyer who just takes blind instructions from the Attorney General, I'll call a zombie and acting contrary to the ethics of the legal profession of Ghana. The American position stays the same thing. And the questioner is a lawyer. And you know that. A lawyer is an independent contractor. A lawyer who succumbs to the views of the other when he strongly feels about it has abdicated his position. and subject to discipline.
Chairman, my last on the post CV, and as the President stated in his State of the Nation address, uncharted waters of Office of Special Prosecutor as part of many instruments to combat economic criminality and white crime in Ghana. Will you share with this House, in addition to this legal instrument, what other strategies and modalities will you work with to combat corruption in Ghana as it's permeated every aspect of our public life, from the police officer on the street to the civil and public servants who is delaying process? What will you do in addition to this legislation to deal with white-collar criminality?
Chairman, I have stated in my 25-page critique that we have to give this thing a trial. And then I stated there that the Ethics in Governance Act 1974 of the USA has gone through many tribulations, and it was not renewed in 1999, to call attention for the fact that we have to set up strong institutions if we must succeed. If we don't set up a strong institution, we are going to replicate the Office of the Special Prosecutor as we did with other institutions. We will have a problem. The way forward I see it is that the Act permits us to set up departments that will help us to do our work. I think that it will not be prudent when I have not been approved to begin talking about what divisions I will set up, what I will not set up. But when my deputy, when I'm appointed and my deputy is appointed and the board is appointed and we have a complement of staff, I will lead them to explore ways of even catching the thief, so that if my employees, are taking bribe, I'll have a way of knowing that they are. There are various ways in intelligence and security to do this. The FBI and other bodies have done it. We will do it. So it's not going to be a situation in which you think that working in my office is just a holiday. No. We shall make sure that if you get into it, we'll hold you there. Because Caesar's wife must be above suspicion, and when you approve of me, I must be the first one above suspicion. I have demonstrated it before in positions I have held, and I'm going to make sure that I myself am above suspicion. That is the basis on which we can eradicate corruption in this country.
Thank you very much, Chairman. When I earlier asked about his hometown, it was to enable me to recuse myself, but he gave me a security pass when he said the record showed that his hometown is Kadima. So I am permitted to ask questions. So one quick question. You were chairman Public Agreements Board from December 1988 to January 1993. And as chairman, you were the gatekeeper of all government or agreements in relation to the government of Ghana. Then you became the Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice from 1993 for the first NDC, the second NDC, 2001, making it 8 years. So comparing your roles as the gatekeeper, checking the contracts before they are entered into, and being a Deputy Minister for Justice, which is being legal advisor and prosecuting and dealing with the offense when it has been committed. In your experience, which has been the most effective in fighting graft and corruption in public office?
Mr. Chairman, thieves, first and foremost, fear, experience, tested and credible investigators whom they cannot influence. That's the way to reduce crime. When the investigator you know is very experienced, very credible, has the capabilities to find wrong, you would not do it. So as chairman of Public Agreements Board, I tried to stop most of these things. But as I said, I had a lot of problems. And so when the Constitution came into force and PNDC Law 42 lapsed, I was too happy because I didn't have to quarrel with my colleagues who thought that the best way to was to cut corners. So I stuck to my work as Deputy Attorney General. And I remember being told that Parliament will handle it. So you go and sit somewhere. So I sat somewhere. But I still helped the Attorney General to review agreements. And the records are there. If you go and look at the agreements I reviewed, they will tell you that I say it as it is. This is not in the national interest, and therefore don't do it. Mr. Chairman, even as Attorney General, when the Chinese loan was brought to Parliament without my concurrence, I wrote a letter to the council to say I had not given my approval. Honorable Joe Ajaho, I remember, as Deputy Speaker, said that unless they got my concurrence, he will not sit on it. So it had to be brought to me for review. I reviewed it. Before it came to Parliament, it was passed. That is my track record. This country is not a milking cow. It is for the people of this country, particularly the downtrodden and the poor ones. And I'm saying that that's my position. It will be, whether I am approved or not, I will continue to fight for the people of this country.
Second one. As Attorney General and as Deputy Attorney General, is your job to advise or to approve government agreements before they are passed on by Cabinet to Parliament for ultimate approval? Because I just heard, I don't know if I heard you right, because you said you hadn't approved as Minister for Justice, or is it that you hadn't reviewed as Minister for Justice? Which of them?
The Minister for Justice is supposed to review an agreement and write a letter giving his opinion. In that opinion, he can say that the agreement is not in the national interest. You will be a little something upstairs if you went ahead and passed an agreement which your Attorney General says it hasn't passed the test. And let me give you one example. The Cotton case, we had said that the matter should go to Parliament for a second time. We wrote to the Minister for Finance. Mrs. Grace Olins felt so strongly about it. She passed the letter through me. I sent it to Dr. Obeda Samoa. He sent the letter to Minister of Finance. They didn't listen to us and went ahead and approved it. When we're out of power, what happened? When we're out of power, what happened? Do you blame somebody when the Attorney General has told you, go to Parliament a second time, and you think that you are a minister, so you know about more than the Attorney General? You mess yourself up. When they went to court, the evidence was that even the Attorney General had advised them to go to Parliament a second time. So the Attorney General doesn't approve, but his word is weighty, and only somebody bent on suicide would ignore it.
And you sound like between 1993 to 2001, there were significant governmental agreements that you had strong disagreements in relation to, which somehow still went ahead and got done. We lived with the consequences. But why didn't you fight them to prevent them from being done, instead of allowing them to be done so that one day we'll live with the consequences?
Mr. Chairman, I never used the word significant. I give an example of one. That's all I did because I didn't want to give many examples. But I gave example of one. And we are colleague ministers. I was deputy minister. The Attorney General was there. I passed a memo to him. He signs the memo. I see it on the float, right? It goes. We even send a cousin of the minister, a woman, to go and talk to him. They still ignored it. So what were we to do? They were debating with us that it didn't need to go to Parliament, right? That was an interpretative issue. Did we have to go to court to interpret it? So we left it at that. And then when others thought it wasn't so, they decided to deal with it. But I was then Deputy Attorney General. And all I had to do was to state my case very strongly, which I did.
My last question is, you've risen to the highest in terms of the bar being the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. And now you are going to be Special Prosecutor. Can you tell me what is significantly different between the job of Special Prosecutor and the DPP at the Attorney General's office? What is so special in terms of the Special Prosecutor's role? What powers, what is it that the Special Prosecutor will be able to do that under Office of the Special Prosecutor Act, the Attorney General, the investigators, and the legal system of Ghana did not cater for? What is so radically different about Special Prosecutor?
Mr. Chairman, my 25-page critique, which was sent to the committee which drafted the law, has covered extensively the questions he has asked. But let me say this. I have made the argument that the Attorney General should be strengthened. The DPP should be strengthened. I gave examples of Namibia, where the Director of Public Prosecution is independent. I gave all those examples. But I said that once the president had given his word, and because of that word of fighting corruption, the population of Ghana decided to vote him overwhelmingly in power, he has a moral obligation to fulfill the promise, right? So if he wants to set up this Special Prosecutor Office and fulfillment of that office, he should do it within the Constitution. What will be different between the Special Prosecutor's Office and whatever office of law enforcement? And the reason why I agreed to accept the nomination is that this is a new office. Corruption has done so much damage to this country. In the conflict resolution, it is called structural violence. It's an invisible violence that kills millions without anybody seeing it. Taking millions of cedis for oneself under illegal circumstances deprives people of good health, education, and all the developmental facilities you can give. So what I want to do is to be able to set up a credible institution with a credible culture, which will be able to block the leakages and the seepages. If I'm able to do that, I don't care even whether I am not able to prosecute anybody. And part of the law says that it is preventative. Put the machinery in place to prevent these leakages and seepages. I can assure you that if we succeed, we won't need foreign aid. I will say, with knocking my chest, that the amount of seepages and leakages at the ports, if we were to close them, our budget will not need foreign assistance. And that is why I accepted this job, to try to help the people of this country, to see whether what I started fighting as a child can at least be realized to some extent, in the hope that whoever takes over from me will keep the spirit. And so I can go to my maker knowing very well that my colleagues who died during the PNDC did not die in vain. And that when I beat them, they'll say, Martin, you did well for us, even though you didn't succeed. Thank you. And that is where President Roosevelt talks about the man in the arena. I don't know how many of you have read it, but if you go and open, Mr. Chairman, if you want, I'll just read it quickly for you. The man in the arena.
My members fear that we may not be able to finish today.
Yeah, but
I want us to finish.
Anybody can Google it.
Yes, we can Google it.
And you will see that I am the man in the arena. I'm muddying myself. I'm dirtying my face so that they can be changed. There are critics and all that. But at least I'm trying. It is not for those who have not tried to criticize. But it is the one who has muddied, bloodied, and dirtied himself in pursuit of a higher object who takes the credit. Not
Mr. Chairman, but the man in the arena doesn't nod his chest as you are doing. Are we safe that you won't settle this matter the Bulsa way?
I am quoting,
knowing that you are from Kadima. Give an assurance to this committee.
Man, I think that it is unacceptable for the minority leader to use a tribal epic to describe a whole people. I think that that is a little bit, no, it's offensive to the tribe, you know, and I think that it is not fair. What is settling the Bulsa way? What does it mean? I mean, you are in the Bomba, you don't talk like that about
I direct that part be taken off the record. He intended it as a joke. I think if the Bulsa way is offensive,
he should not make derisive remarks about Bulses. I will never do that about the Gombes.
Chairman. Let the record reflect that the reference to Bulsa Way is taking off the record. No, you're done. You're done.